Hello and welcome to the Climbing Destinations podcast. My name is Amit and I'll be your host. I'm super excited to get this going, and I have to say thanks for all the messages and support that made me actually go for it. So today is the perfect day to start as it's January 1st, 2024. And we will be talking today about Bishop and specifically about the bouldering in Bishop. Just really short, Bishop is one of the top and most famous bouldering areas in the world. The granite buttermilks with the snowy mountains in the background is really an amazing sight. In the episode, I'm lucky enough to have my friend Ezra talking about Bishop. Ezra is a really good friend of mine. He was my chief route setter when I was working as a setter full time. He's an amazing person and always makes the people around him hyped and just better at everything. And that's a pretty cool guy to be around. Climbing wise, Ezra is, as you can say, a lifelong climber. And because he's been in the game for so long, he has some really interesting views about climbing in general. And it was really nice to hear his thoughts and point of views. Together with his partner Mikey, today they are doing the van life thing over a year now, and they are basically traveling around bouldering areas in the States, which is pretty amazing. I'll let him talk about that more. Me personally, never climbed in Bishop. I think we did a pretty good job about the introduction of the area, and I learned a lot about Bishop and all the area. And yeah, if I would plan a climbing trip tomorrow in Bishop, I learned a lot about it, and now I know what to expect. So I feel like we did a pretty good job about that. So without further ado, I'm super excited to say for the first time, enjoy the episode, and I'll see you on the other side. Hello, Ezra. Welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for showing up.
Of course.
It's great to see you after so long, man.
You too.
So we're gonna talk a bit about Bishop, or not a bit, quite a lot. And
Let's go.
can you share before we dive in, like just a bit about yourself, where you are now, and yeah.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Ezra. I'm 33 years old. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. I lived the past 15 years in Israel. And about 14 months ago, my partner and I moved to the States to do the van life thing. We're both climbers. I've been climbing um, since I was 11, so just over 22 years. And Mikey, my partner, she's been climbing for, I guess, 7 years. And we boulder. And so our life now in the van is mainly from climbing destination to climbing destination and climbing as many rocks as we can. And right now we're in Bishop, and we've been here for the past 2 months, and we love it.
Oh man, I'm so jealous. not not that
It's a good
my
life.
not that my life is bad at the moment. Living in Barcelona, it's not bad, but
Yeah.
that sounds really really good. Um, so you more than a year in van life now.
Yeah.
Wow. And you mentioned before we started recording, Bishop is your favorite.
Yeah. So basically, we started on the East Coast and we did a southern route to the West Coast. We also like went north to the PNW for a bit. So I mean, we've done a lot of things, but basically, we are in terms of climbing destinations. We were in the Chattanooga area for a while, and then we were in Waco for a while, and then we were in Red Rocks, and then we were in Mose, and then we were in Joe's, and then we were in Leavenworth, or no, we were in Colorado for a while, and then Leavenworth, and now we're in California in Bishop. So we've been around to quite a number of destinations, and they've all really been unique and spectacular in their own right. But there's something very very magical and special about Bishop. And I do think it's our favorite place that we've been so far. And it's just great for van life. It's great for the hang. It's great to stay here a while. The access is fantastic and the facilities are great. And so we love it. And we're planning on staying for the whole season, hopefully, if we don't get snowed out.
Wow, amazing. Um, cool. So before like we go into all the stuff about Bishop, uh, talk a bit about your what you like most about climbing, like what style and yeah, you mentioned the boulder, not a big wall climber, but as well
Yes.
what you like in terms of like overhanging slabs. So if you know we get you were talking about like an amazing slab, but someone would hate slabs, and you would, you know.
Right. Yeah. Wow. So I started climbing trad when I was a kid in the States. The first place I climbed was Seneca Rocks in West Virginia. Um, and I thought ropes, that was the thing. And for a long time, I loved ropes and multi-pitch and trad climbing. And I think just I kind of got more and more scared over the years and had some gnarly falls. And now I'm terrified of gear. I like see a rope touch rock and I'm like, oh my God, that's going to snap. And I fell in love with bouldering when I was in high school. And I've kind of really focused all of my climbing and bouldering. I was a route setter for many years just for bouldering. And now I exclusively climb bouldering. I have no ropes or gear. I've sold my trad rack and everything. It's funny when I meet like people who say to me like that they're rope climbers, it's kind of like meeting a distant cousin where you're like, oh, we have some kind of connection, but I don't really care about you at all. That kind of a feeling. I think Mikey is curious. She's rope curious, I would say. It feels like she's cheating on me a little bit, but I think one of these days out here in the States, she'll try sport climbing. I think she could really enjoy it. I don't think she's ever really done that. So I like to boulder. I think that there's something very pure about bouldering. It feels to me like the sprint of the sport. Um, it's just kind of you and the rock. And I peak at 6 moves. So anything more than that, and I'm falling off the wall. So bouldering
Yeah.
is really good in that respect. I love the hang of bouldering. I think it's a much more like social, communal experience at the rocks. I like being able to hang out on the pads and just chill in the sun and, commit when you want to commit and not commit when you don't want to commit. In terms of climbing style, I like to climb dynamically. I like to crimp on overhanging walls, and I like to feel in control. So I'm not very good on slab. I'm not very good on unsecure climbing. Anything that's insecure, I kind of get scared easy, and that's like a big mental game for me, which here in Bishop has been great to work on a little bit. But I know that if I'm just going out and want to have a chill day and enjoy myself, I'm going to look for crimps on overhangs and moonboard style climbing is kind of my jam. In terms of rock, both Mike and I most like sandstone. The climbing in the southeast in America was amazing. Really reminded me a lot of like Fontainebleau. But we're getting more and more interested and excited by granite. So that's been cool. That's been cool here in Bishop to kind of learn a little bit more about granite and a very unique type of rock.
Wow, amazing. Thanks for that. Now we
Yeah,
know all the
you know
Ezra
everything about me.
Ezra climbing
Yeah.
preferences. Nice. Well, I'm now curious to, yeah. So when we talk about like specific boulders and stuff, yeah, we'll dive
Yeah.
into that. So can you tell us about Bishop in terms of general
Yeah.
what it is, where it is, and the granite. I am ashamed to say, but I thought, yeah, I don't know what I thought about the rock type, but it's granite, yeah.
Well, it's very unique. We'll get to that in a second. So Bishop is this little tiny town with like a population of 3,000. It is in the middle of the eastern Sierra Nevada mountains, and it's basically in this valley between two sides of the mountain range of the Sierra Nevada, and it's in a rain shadow. So that means that all the clouds and all the storms that come from the coast, they break at the mountains, and Bishop itself pretty much stays dry. It's like a desert here.
Wow.
There's like 300 days of sunshine a year, less than 6 inches of rain, I think. So it's really amazing climbing conditions. The summers get really, really hot. So there's probably like a month or two in the summer that you wouldn't want to be climbing here. But like most of the year, unless it gets snowed out, there's kind of always something to find. And the climbing around Bishop is really diverse. There's the famous buttermilks, which are quartz monzonite, a very unique kind of granite, very special kind of granite. And they're these giant boulders that are just spectacular and like breathtaking. Like the Peabodys are probably the most famous. It's like a 15-meter high boulder. Like the size is just like
Well,
indescribable almost. And then there's also the volcanic tablelands where the happies and the sads are. And that's volcanic rock. And it's very, very different. It looks very, very different. It feels very, very different. And I think after you spend a while at the buttermilks, going to the happies and the sads kind of feels like a day at the beach. There's like better sun. It's warmer because it's lower elevation. It's not as high. Most of the climbs aren't as high. And the rock type is like very, very different. So it's really cool. There's a lot of diversity of climbing. I mean, beyond the bouldering, obviously, in Bishop, there's a ton of rope climbing. There's everything in the Bishop area. There's the Owens River Gorge with a lot of rope climbing. I think probably about half the climbing here is bouldering, and the rest is like sport and trad and whatever. So there's really something for everyone. I don't know anything about rope climbing, so I have nothing to say about that. But in terms of the in terms of the bouldering, I mean, it's really, really world class. There's a lifetime of climbing here, like there is in most destinations. And just in terms of the diversity and the spectacle, I mean, it's breathtaking. Being here is super special. We were staying for like a month in the Buttermilks and like waking up every morning, like a 10-minute walk away from the Peabody Boulder is like, wow,
well,
what a special place to be. So yeah. What else should I say about Bishop? Bishop is a really cool town. It used to be a very like small conservative town of mainly ranchers, famous for like mules. There's like all these like events for mules every year. I don't know. Um, and over the past couple of years, or maybe even a little bit longer, probably even before COVID, a lot of like young people have been leaving the cities on the West Coast and coming to live in small towns. And so there's a lot of climbers that have been moving to Bishop, which is very interesting because Bishop is like I said, is a very, very small and it can't really grow. All the land around Bishop is owned by Los Angeles.
huh.
It's either Los Angeles or it's owned by like the National Forest or something. And so like the town kind of has like a noose around it and it can't really develop much beyond what it already is. So like buying homes and land here is a complicated thing for people coming in and certainly for locals who are staying. And so there is like a very interesting like cultural shift in this town that's happening, and it's happening in a lot of small towns in America, especially ones that are close to such great extreme sports. In addition to bouldering, Bishop is a fantastic area for ATVs. It's also like less than an hour from Mammoth, so it's like on the way where, from people coming from LA to go snowboarding on the weekend are passing through Bishop. They don't generally come to the boulders, but they usually stop at Shat's Bakery, which is like an epic bakery that's been around since 1938. Like everyone knows about Shat's, and on the way to Mammoth, they usually stop there. So it's an interesting place. There's like a little main street that sometimes feels pretty busy, but the town itself is tiny and kind of seems like it's going to stay that way. So
Yeah,
that's interesting.
that's cool. Yeah. And is it
Yeah.
like you walk around town and everyone with crash pads? It's like,
um, yeah, I'm not sure. I think there are places in town that are very like there are places in town that are climbing hubs, right?
yeah.
So like there's certain breweries and bars that are like, mainly climbers work there, and that's where a lot of the climbers hang out. And there's events there. There's a coffee shop called the Black Sheep, which is like a climbing friendly coffee shop. And the Mountain Rambler is probably like the famous like climbing brewery over there. So there you'll meet a lot of climbers, but not necessarily walking around town. I think like you see a lot of people who are passing through on the way to somewhere else, or locals. So I think it's a mixed bag. The climbing itself is like not in the town of
Oh,
Bishop.
okay.
You have to drive
Okay.
like to the Buttermilks is like half an hour drive maybe, and to the Happies maybe, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes depending on where you're going. So everything is like around Bishop. The town itself is very small. Another really cool thing to say about just this area that we're in, because of the Sierra Nevadas and stuff, we're on this like there's so much volcanic activity in the area, which is why all the rocks and the happys and the sads are volcanic, but there's also a ton of hot springs because of it.
Oh,
So
well.
like between Mammoth and Bishop, there's just a plethora of free outdoor hot springs, great rest day activities.
Wow.
And there's just so many spots to go and jump in and get
Amazing.
some R&R.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool. You touched in a bit of what we're gonna do, like what we're gonna dive deeper later.
Oh, nice.
Uh,
Okay, cool.
cool. So I'm not sure you're gonna know to answer this one, but because you're in a van, but how
Yeah.
normally like would you get to Bishop? You know,
Like from where?
from let's say actually it's I wanted to ask that before and forget. So now when you're in the boulders, you see people from all over the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Bishop is certainly a world-class destination. Probably like I know before I moved back to the States, like I always knew of Waco and Bishop as like the two most famous climbing places in the US. Is that true for you as well? When you think of like the most famous climbing places in the US, what do you think of?
Well, Yosemite.
Maybe Yosemite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, Red River Gorge.
Oh, okay. That's rope stuff.
Yeah, rough stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah,
fuck you.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely Bishop. Yeah, because it has so many famous lines and so like
Yeah.
picturesque. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
crazy stuff.
I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot in the U.S. That's an unfair question. You're right.
Yeah,
There's like a lot of there's a lot of places, but Bishop, I say, is definitely on some kind of top five list
yeah,
in that regard. So I think it does bring climbers from all over the world. Basically, is what I was gonna say. And still, climbing is still a niche thing. So
yeah,
there's like a lot of days midweek that the boulders feel kind of quiet and chill, and it'll ramp up on weekends and stuff. People coming
yeah,
from LA, but yeah, we meet people all over the world. Obviously, there's a lot of Israelis everywhere you go. Israelis attract other Israelis, so we meet Israelis everywhere. But
for sure.
we meet people from all over. I would say the vast majority are like from California that we've seen so far. Like more people who are kind of living in the area a little bit. Bishop's far away from a lot of big cities, so it's about 4 to 5 hours away from everything. And like the big cities around it are like LA, Vegas, and probably like I don't know Reno or something like that, or Fresno or something. And all of them are between 4 to 5 hours away. So it's kind of not the most accessible area, and that kind of makes it great for climbing because you're a little bit more remote. But if you're coming from abroad or from afar, you'd probably fly into LA and make the drive. It's a pretty chill drive, but it does take time. But it's pretty much a straight shot to Bishop, which is awesome. There is an airport that was just built in Bishop. But I don't know where flights come from,
No,
and I don't know how much they cost. Certainly
yeah,
not from Europe.
no,
Yeah.
not Paris Bishop. No.
Right. Yeah. That
Um,
would be funny. Yeah.
so you'd fly into one of those, yeah, cities, big cities nearby, and then,
Yeah. And then
pro-
you really rent a car and make the drive. Yeah.
and then most
Yeah.
people, where do they stay? In vans or?
Oh, so that's probably a mixed bag. Maybe most famously is the climbing campground called the Pit, which is in the volcanic tablelands, pretty close to the Happies and the Sads. That's a pretty popular spot. It's a nice campground. There's a lot of sites. No water, but there are great bathrooms and trash and recycling. So that's great. And it's only like a 10-15 minute drive from Main Street. So really accessible.
That's camping?
That's the Pit. Yeah, it costs $5 a night for a site of two vehicles. So that's like one option I think people do. Another option is dispersed camping off Buttermilk Road in the Buttermilks, which is what we did for the first month and a half that we were here. And it's really, really beautiful. Obviously, there's no facilities except for at the Boulder parking, they recently built a pit toilet. So that's really nice. This past summer, a new pit toilet opened at the Buttermilks. So that's there. So if you're camping out there, there's that, but there's obviously no water or trash. And then other people, I think there are some people that kind of stay in town. in their vans in different places. I don't know if it's legal or it's frowned upon in the locals, but I know some people do that. And then other people get motels
Hmm.
or stay in the hostel. There's Hostel California in town. So there's also some options for plumbing and beds for those of us who need
Yeah.
those amenities. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so there is pretty much, yeah, for anyone, and like any kind of pricing as well, I guess.
Yeah. I would say there's a good range of options and a good range of prices. Yeah.
Nice, nice. And it's like loads of vans, van life. It's big there.
There are a lot of vans. Yeah. Um, yeah, the parking at the Buttermilks can get pretty filled with vans. And you see a lot of them kind of camping in different pull-offs off of Buttermilk Road. Um, yeah, it does seem like I don't know what it's like in Europe so much, but like in the US, a lot of the climbing destinations are just kind of overrun by van life at this point.
Yeah,
Which has pros and cons to it, obviously. But yeah, I
yeah,
mean, we do see a lot of vans here.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In Europe, I guess it depends where you go. But if like now living near, well, not near, but Stirana, which is quite a big one.
Hmm.
Yeah, so in the weekends or even just in the season, there is a major car parking, and it's all filled with vans. It's like becoming a neighborhood, but
Yeah.
it's
That's right.
it's nice.
It's an interesting thing. Someone told me I was speaking to someone in Waco that said that the van culture, it used to be that like when climbers came out before van life was such a trending thing, so a lot of them would be intense, and then that would kind of demand you to cook outside and be around a fire, and it like translated to more communal experiences. And now we kind of have our vans with our heaters, and we just kind of slide the cargo door shut, and we're much more
Yeah,
isolated from each other. And I think it's true, and it's a little sad sometimes. It's something else I think in general that's been lacking in the US is that all of the destinations we've been to, there doesn't seem to be like a lot of facilities that are built to create communal experience.
hmm,
Like I think of like the Rocklands or Magic Wood, or places in Font even where like the campground is like built around the central communal place where everyone's cooking together around the same fire. And like that doesn't happen as much in the US. There's much more of like an isolated feeling, like people want to be
yeah,
alone in nature, much more individualistic, like less of like a focus on making infrastructure that um, that creates communal experience.
yeah,
And I think that's a shame because that's a
yeah.
big part of climbing for me.
True.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Never thought about that. Yeah, except of Australia, I never actually traveled. Yeah, sleeping in the car. So,
Uh-huh.
but
But what do you
yeah,
mean? What do you do? You climb. What do you do when you climb in font?
I never been to Font, but in
Oh,
uh, but in Albarracin, for example,
yeah.
which is
Okay.
a
Yeah.
5 hours drive. So yeah, rent
Uh-huh.
Airbnb or something like that.
Ah, okay. But
Um,
Albertine has a lot of communal options, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Also
Yeah, there's like a lot
the
of like there's like a climbing hostel there, right?
exactly, yeah, and the coffee shops is like, yeah, you only see climbers. Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
the main restaurant. Yeah, but Albarracin will be a different.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true. Um, so
Yeah.
let's go into climbing, um, and then we circle back like to other things that are also important. But so
Okay.
I have to tell you that like I like bouldering outside, but only in the last year or two, like moving to Europe again, I'm like I really enjoy it, like a lot.
Mm.
If it's good and the landings are good, the boulders are good and stuff. So wow, I am yeah. So
What changed?
I think I visited like few world class places,
Uh-huh.
and that changed. Like I've been to a place. Also,
Yeah.
there will be an episode about that. Sintra in Portugal. It's like
Oh, never even heard of that.
Half an hour from Lisbon. It's totally worth it. And the
Yeah.
boulders are granite, and they're just so aesthetic,
Uh-huh.
and the landing are clear, and yeah, I just had so much fun. And yeah, and you can go alone as well.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, that's a great thing about bouldering. But hold on a second. This
Yeah.
is an interesting shift because like I know that I know I don't always admit it, but I know in my heart that you're more of a rope climber than a
Yes.
boulderer
Yes.
on the one hand. But on the other hand, what's interesting is like I've only ever bouldered with you
True.
and only ever like route set with you bouldering. So I've
True.
like only seen the way that you think of bouldering movement, which I should say, I don't know if I'm like giving away too much about you on this podcast, but like you're very interested in a lot of like new age movement and a lot of things that to me feel like very bouldering movement, right? Like
Mhm.
coordination moves that feel like very bouldering specific. Again, I've only seen you like route setting, so I don't
Yeah.
know. So that's interesting what you're saying, that like it's been so long that you haven't been inspired by bouldering outdoors. I kind of want you to say a couple more words about that, I guess is what I'm because I'm
Uh,
surprised and compelled.
that's funny. Yeah, yeah. Just I don't know. I just it was just a lot of fun, and I even found myself, and also I feel like that whenever you get really better at bouldering, it translates back to sport climbing. So
Mm,
if I will be like a machine and I'll be a super strong boulder, I know it will translate and it will make me a better sport climber. So yeah, I guess
interesting.
a lot comes from that. And it got even to a point when I recently said like, you know what, I don't mind to spend like 6 months like on bouldering, like moving like
Uh-huh.
bouldering. Because we have few areas
Yeah.
like near Barcelona, like half-hour drive, and they're sick. So I'm thinking about that. But
Yeah.
I was saying that because because now
Yeah.
you're in Bishop. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah. So tell me a bit about Bishop. Like, and actually, I didn't know the place you were talking about as well. The Sad and Happy.
Sad and Happies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like,
Uh,
what's the
huh?
style? You see, everyone knows the videos. You know the evolution, right? And the yeah,
Yeah.
all the stick lines. So, like, what's the style? Is it crimpy, overhanging, or
Yeah.
whatever, and everything?
So, like, if we're talking only about boulder, I don't know anything about the rope climbing
Yeah,
around
yeah.
Bishop, so I
We're
can't
going
speak
bouldering.
to that. But if we're only talking about bouldering, so like we should distinguish between the buttermilks and the happies and the sads. Very different rock type, very different type of climbing. Um, in the buttermilks, so a lot of the boulders are really high. I think
Okay.
that's like probably the first thing people think about when they think about the buttermilks is high balls. Very, very impressive aesthetic lines. The rock is incredibly abrasive, so you lose skin super, super quickly.
Oh,
Um, the buttermilks are not skin friendly, and a lot of the top outs are pretty smooth and pretty sketchy. And I would say the same for a lot of the down climbs. Like there are climbs in the buttermilks that like the down you should check out the down climb before you top anything out, because like you could easily like get stuck up there.
that's actually really
um
good tip. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, there's like a lot, there have been a lot of moments where like the down climb for me has felt harder than the climb, and I've had some pretty intense like moments down climbing in the buttermilks. um there's a lot of crimping, it's very fingery, I think, the buttermilks. And there's something kind of like pebbly about the quartz monzonite type rock type. So like oftentimes you are like crimping like pebbles or like finding microbeta around the pebbles for fingers on holds. Um, but like the root setting is incredible. I mean, you go to the buttermilks and the lines feel like perfect. Like so many of the roots there are just, they climb so beautifully, and there's like a little bit of everything. You're gonna have climbs that are just like kind of crimpy, and you're gonna have climbs that involve a lot of heels and toes even, and there's gonna be dynamic stuff and techie stuff. There's a lot of slab. and there's also a lot of mega overhangs.
Oh.
So there's just a little bit of everything in the buttermilks, and it's awesome. The happies and the sads are very different. The happies and the sads are north of Bishop, north of town. They're in these little valleys. The happies gets a lot of sun. The sads a little bit less. I think maybe that's the reason for the names. And the sads also, there's like a lot of caving climbing, so you can do it more in the summer when it's hotter, but in the winter it can get pretty cold there. The happies are much more exposed, so there's like a lot of sun, and like I said, it's kind of like going to the beach. A little bit of a longer uphill approach to get to the boulders than the buttermilks. The buttermilks is like right by the parking. And the climbing there's a lot more pockets. It's like very pockety. It's not as hard on the skin, so it's nice after a couple of days in the buttermilks to go to the happies and the sads and have a break from the skin. But I find the holds in the happies and the sads less ergonomic. So they kind of like hurt my tendons. They kind of pinch my fingers weird sometimes. There's something that's like painful about the holds, but not because of the tips, like just because kind of like the shape of the holds and the type of rock. And there I think the climbing is much more gymnastic. It's like much more gym-like. A lot of the famous climbs, like in the happies that I think of, are like the Hulk, for instance, is probably one of the most famous V6s in the happies, and it's a very like dynamic, big holds, gymnastic kind of movement, very like gym climbing. But even there's also some diversity, and there's good slabs as well. So a little bit of everything.
Do you know how many problems there are in Bishop and on the other area?
Oh wow!
Like around.
There's a ton. Let's check.
It's huge. No, it's huge area.
Yeah. There's a ton of bouldering routes. I would have to look in the guidebook to get a number. But it does feel. Oh, I have the guidebook right here.
Nice.
This is the guidebook. This is the second edition of the Bishop Bouldering Guidebook with all of Mikey and I's markings of all the climbs we want to hit, color coded. By level of urgency.
They're so organized.
It's a ton of climbs. Yeah. It's a ton of climbs. I'd have to look to see. I should have looked that up before I talk.
It looks
so
big.
In terms of bouldering, it says over here in the guidebook that there's more than 2,400 problems.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's enough.
Yeah.
And
that's enough.
Would you say, like you mentioned, it's tall, so would you say it's like you would recommend anyone, like a beginner, or also to go?
What's super cool about the buttermilks is that there are high balls in like every grade that are all like epic climbs.
Okay.
So if you have a head game and you want to try some of the high stuff, there's probably something for you at the grade that you're climbing. Beyond that, there's also some stuff that's not so high.
Okay.
Another one of the most famous climbs in the buttermilks is the Ironman Traverse, which is just like this rail that goes across a very low boulder, and you just climb it from left to right, and it's a V4, and there's no elevation there at all, and that's like super cool. And there's also some lower stuff that is like kind of sprinkled around the high balls. I do think there's something for everyone there. Although I will say, and this is not specific to bouldering, to Bishop, but like I think that this is going to sound super critical of America. Let me think about how I'm going to say this for a second. One of the things that I appreciate most about Fontainebleau is the yellow circuit. The fact that there are developed climbs for like 3-year-olds, and they're awesome. And like maybe you and I could climb them without hands or whatever, but like the fact that someone took the time to develop those routes and consider way more populations of climbers and kind of the entry-level experience, both for little kids, but also for new climbers, I think is amazing.
It is.
And I have struggled in a lot of destinations in the States to find like a similar type of development. And I think that generally the lower grades, not easy, climbing is never easy,
True.
but the lower grades that are classic are often classic because they're high, scary, or like impressive for another reason. But sometimes when people first come to a climbing place, they want to just have a very approachable V0 that climbs consistently and doesn't have a scary top out. And I think more development needs to happen like that. And I'd like to see more climbs like that in guidebooks. Just walking around the buttermilks, like I scramble on a whole bunch of things and I have a really good time. And sometimes I'm like, why isn't this in the guidebook?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why has no one given this like an amazing 3-star VB? Like, that would be so cool if this thing had more chalk on it and more people knew about it and we were a little bit more inviting and inclusive to different types of climbers and with different levels of experience and body types. So that's kind of my opinion in general. I think that like across the board, there's work to be done in developing lower grade climbing and making it more accessible at the entry level. Yeah. So
True. No, I get that. Yeah. But if you come to Bishop and you don't want to climb high balls, do you have anything to do there?
definitely the happies and the sads, there's a lot of stuff that's not high at all. So that's like probably a really good place to start, I would say. And I would look around the buttermilks and I would try some of the lower stuff and then I would try some of the higher stuff as well and maybe surprise yourself. There's definitely some lower boulders that are totally classic here. There's a very famous, like, I think it's a V1. It's called the Robinson's Rubber Tester. And it's this like very relatively short slab, but it's like a fully committing slab with very little holds. And it's like
Wow.
all on your feet and really techy for its grade. And it's so approachable because it's so short. And like, even if you take a fall, you're not going to cheese grater down multiple meters. You're just going to like fall on the pads. So I think it's like, that's fantastic. There's a great birthday boulder right by the parking lot, which has a great V0, V1, V2, V3 on it. Like, not high, awesome, easy top out. So I think there's stuff that you can find for sure. And also, where better to test yourself and push yourself in the buttermilks,
Yes. Okay. Come
So
prepared.
there's a lot
Come
of learning to
prepared.
be done here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are the landings mostly?
Yeah. Hard landings. I mean, I'm a wuss when I climb, so I usually only climb stuff with like pretty good landings. So everything
Okay.
I've been on has been pretty chill. Um, but because of the size of the boulders and because of like some of the dynamic movements and some of the climbs, there are boulders where you need a lot of pads for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
Where the landing zone is pretty large. But yeah, it's nothing like climbing in Colorado, it's not like climbing out of a hole on like,
Okay.
a rock fall or anything like that.
Yeah.
No, the landings are pretty chill. All in all, a lot of the stuff is pretty straight down and pretty flat.
Mm-hmm.
You just need a lot of pads for it sometimes.
Yeah.
I've also gotten really into double stacking pads now,
Yeah.
which is like I never did in my 20s. It's like a very
It's good, no?
recent thing. So nice on my knees, dude.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, the more
That's
pads,
the
the
way.
merrier. I don't want anyone feeling not
Yeah.
comfortable. Yeah.
How do you do like with the pets? Actually, can you rent there or you have to come with yours?
Yeah, there's a small climbing gym in town called Sage to Summit, and they rent out pads. There may be other places as well that I'm not familiar with. I've only rented pads from Sage to Summit a couple years ago when I was here the first time when I came without pads. But we have our own pads now, and we usually are climbing with the crew. We're meeting up with people, so
Hmm.
it's always been. We've never had not enough pads.
Yeah.
We've always
Yeah. But
yeah.
you wouldn't come with one or two. Like you need a, yeah. Like,
Yeah, I would say like unless you're coming on like a busy weekend and there's like going to be a lot of people and you're expecting to like, just have a pad party with other people, you should probably have multiple pads with you when you're hitting the buttermilks for sure.
yeah.
If you're going to the happies and the sads, probably one pad
Hmm.
is enough for most of the climbs and you'll be pretty chill.
Hmm.
But yeah, in the buttermilks, I would recommend bringing more pads.
Nice. Important. And
Yeah.
the approaches normally, how are they?
Yeah. So the main area of the buttermilks called Buttermilks Mains or whatever, super accessible. Parking is like right next to the boulders. And then you just kind of like walk around this adult jungle gym. Very, very accessible, very close to the cars. And like I said, also there's a bathroom in that parking lot in the mains. The other like satellite areas around the mains, like the pollen grains or the beehive area or Dale's Camp or that stuff, or where like the checkerboard is. What's that area called? I forgot. So those can sometimes have a longer approach, which are a little bit more of a hike. I think like the approach into the pollen grains is probably like 15 minutes, maybe,
Oh, that's
kind of up and down.
that's nothing though.
Uh, because you're a rope climber. um, I don't know. I feel the burn in my legs in the morning. I don't know, but no, I'm spoiled. We spent too long in Joe's, so I'm used to like parking at the boulder.
Yeah.
Um, I guess it depends. The happiness is a little bit longer, a little uphill. But yeah, nothing extreme. Maybe
Okay.
the longest one here is like to Dale's Camp, and that's I don't know, maybe half an hour. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think they're super long all in all. Um,
And like this,
Most of it is really accessible.
the sectors are like you have a main parking, and then you just walk to the boulders, like to the different sectors, or
Yeah, so that really is only so the happies and the sads only have one parking really, unless you're driving up to the top of the canyon and hiking down. I guess you can do that too, but most people will park at the bottom. There's like one parking, and the happies and the sads are like a single trail that you just follow through. And the buttermilks have different parkings depending on where you're going in the buttermilks. But like I said, the mains very close to the road, and all the other stuff not too far of an approach.
nice.
Yeah.
Can you tell us like best sectors or the one that you like the most for, let's say, let's start with a V0 to, well, there are no V0s, or a V0s to V2.
Hmm. Um, yeah, so I think that lower grades, um, I would recommend going to the Happies for. I think the climbing there is much more approachable at the lower grades, and there's more density of those grade types. So I recommend going to the Happies for the low grades. But the Buttermilk's Mains also has a good selection of intro climbs and good warm ups. I think of the Sunshine Wall, which has like a V0 and a V1, which are pretty high, but like pretty chill and pretty epic. There's the Birthday Boulder, like I said there, which is great. And I think like in the Buttermilk Mains, there are like three V2s, which are like epic.
Wow.
And that's the Sheep Herder on the Loaf Boulder, Green Wall Essential on the Green Wall Boulder, and the Hunk. They're all kind of high, but they're like incredible climbs. And just to have such classics at that grade is awesome.
Oh,
So I think there's what to do there. In addition to that, there's like some silly stuff. Like I said, the rubber tester is one of those like kind of gimmicky things, which is like a really great climb. And there's also like the birthing experience, which is also V1, where you kind of like start in this giant Waco and you're in the fetal position
uh-huh.
and you have to climb out of this like Waco. And it's pretty wild. Also a low boulder, so very approachable and also kind of gimmicky. So like even stronger, more experienced climbers are gonna struggle on it. And that's always great to watch and I recommend. So yeah, I would say probably the mains in the milks and the happies are great for like intro grades.
All right, sweet.
Yeah.
And then go higher, like up to, let's say, V5. What is it in the European? It's like 6C.
6C,
Yeah,
6C
yeah,
or 6C plus
yeah.
maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I think where have we seen a really good density of fours? So in the pollen grains, which is a satellite area in the buttermilks, the pollen grains is really, really gorgeous. And one of the most famous climbs in Bishop is there called Jedi Mind Tricks, which is a V4 high ball. It's an 8-meter tall boulder. Um,
Wow, that's tall.
Yeah, 90-degree face, like
Whoa.
it's epic. Really cool technical movement at the bottom and a very committing top. That's in the pollen grains. And the pollen grains, like all the boulders, are kind of spread apart and they're very large and rather tall.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of cool stuff out there, but I would say probably that's a little bit maybe harder. Um, but what are some epic fours besides that? Ironman Traverse, like I said, is an uber classic. A lot of people like that. I'm not so into that kind of climbing or like just kind of
Yeah.
endurancey pumpy stuff, but like everyone seems to like it and it's always pretty crowded.
Yeah.
So what do I know? Um, and in the Happies, there's in the Happies and the Sads, there are fantastic V3s and 4s. Some that come to mind are Carrot Top in the Happies is a V3 that's amazing. There's a great V4 called Cue Ball. There's some stuff in the Headbangers Cave, I think Beer Tumor it's called. There's also on the Serengeti boulder, very famous V5 is Serengeti. I don't like that climb, but I love the V4 next to it called the Flying Zebra, which I think is amazing. And there's Bleach Bones right next to that, which is also really, really great. So there's a lot of stuff over there as well. Um,
And when you say most of the stuff like about highballs, so most of them like are 8 meters tall or like.
there's quite a bit. There's quite a bit that's that high or even more.
Mhm.
Some climbs like the vertical part of them will end at 6 meters, and then you'll have like a really high top off
Okay.
maybe, but you're kind of scrambling the rest of the way. So that exists as well. But there's some mega stuff here, man. I
Yeah.
mean, like
Yeah.
the Milks has like the Luminance boulder in it, which you have too big to flail,
Yeah. I've seen
and
that.
the climbs over there. There's obviously the Peabodies, which are just mega. Holy crap, they're mega.
Yeah.
And watching anyone top those out is like always
Yeah.
terrifying and inspiring at the same time.
Hmm.
What is worth noting though, is that on the Peabody boulders, at least, there are climbs that don't top out, and they're awesome.
Mm.
There's a V5. There's two V5s on the Grandma Peabody called Go Granny Go. They do not top out, and they're great climbs. Super recommend them just for anyone who wants to climb those boulders but is like a little bit scared of topping out. There's stuff there. And there's also really easy stuff that does top out. On the Grandma Peabody boulder, there's the Southwest Durette, which I think is like, I don't know, 5'8" or 5'9" or something.
Hmm.
It's like easier than a V0. It's just super high exposed and terrifying. So if you want to like go there, with the mental game,
Dude.
then like you can.
Yeah.
If you don't want to climb hard, but you want to get a little heady, that stuff exists as well.
Nice. We'll have in the show notes a few of your recommendation about like best boulders for grades and stuff. So
Oh, okay,
yeah,
sure, I can do that. Yeah.
make sure to see the show notes. So we were at 6C or V5, I think. So
Yeah.
a bit higher, let's say, I don't know, until up 7C or V8, 9.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I have gotten the feeling that like there's not a lot of V7s that are classics here in Bishop, and that it's like pretty dense on sixes, and the sixes are pretty hard, and then there's like a lot more V8s. There are some classic V7s. High Plains Drifter is one of them in the mains. Huge boulder, epic climb. And there's some like sevens that are kind of like extensions of other climbs, like sit starts to other climbs. But yeah, I have found that a lot of the sixes I've tried, the classics in Bishop are pretty hard, and that there's not a lot of sevens. But like some of the classic sixes, like in the Happies, you have like the Hulk, Every Color You Are, and the Gleaner are probably like the three most famous. And then there's like Atari as well, but it's pretty high up. I don't think as many people climb it. And those are like all really epic climbs. And then like in the Buttermilks, probably the most famous V6s are like Drone Militia and the Pollen Grains. Seven Spanish Angels, which is on the Carter Boulder, and like the Greenwall Center is another very famous V6. And the Cave Problem I really recommend. That's a lot of fun. Very burly climbing, but really cool line. So a little bit of everything all over, I guess what I'm saying. And above that, there's a lot of famous stuff, but I've never climbed it.
But
Yeah.
generally, you would just go like it seemed like every area has a lot of diversity in grading, and yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. This has all been kind of me mumbling and blabbing
No,
about
no,
the
no,
grades,
that's
but
good.
yeah,
Yeah,
everything has like a lot of diversity, a little bit of everything. And I'll just like also say like on a personal level, like,
yeah,
I always take grades with a grain of salt.
for
They're like an
sure.
indication of something maybe, but like they're not always a helpful way for me to climb or to think about climbing or to decide what
Definitely.
I want to climb.
Mhm.
So I try not to think about grades too much, and I often have to like look in the guidebook and remind myself what grade something has been given. Like to me, there's two grades. There's climbs I've climbed, and there's climbs I haven't climbed yet.
Yeah.
And the former feels easy, and the latter feels impossible. And that's kind of the experience of being a climber,
Nice.
right?
Yeah.
Like that seems to
Yeah.
be climbing to me. And maybe like the hardest grade I've done here in Bishop isn't necessarily the hardest climb
Yeah.
that I've had to
Yeah.
fight for. So that's always a good thing I think to keep in mind, and it should inspire people to try everything
Yeah.
and anything that they're psyched on. And like, climbing is obviously, especially bouldering, falling is a huge part of it,
Yeah.
and it's okay to try some moves. And the first step to climbing a V10 is trying a V10, right? So
Very
don't be
true.
afraid to try.
Yeah. What was
Yeah.
some of your like top boulders for now? Like that
Here in
you
Bishop,
liked the
so
most?
definitely Jedi mind tricks. Sending Jedi mind tricks, what for me was like a huge deal. I'm really afraid of heights, and like I said, like when I'm feeling insecure, I get super sketched out. So kind of bringing in the mental game that day, and feeling confident in myself. That was like for me a really big deal. I think in general, maybe this is something that's not spoken about a lot, but like we all know that climbing is largely a mental game, and I think especially outside. I think when we climb in the gym, oftentimes we'll like have this feeling that like, oh, I wish I was stronger, and that's kind of our focus. And then we go outside, like I never think I wish I was stronger when I'm
Yeah.
outside. Like when I'm outside, I'm like, I wish I had more confidence. I
Yeah.
wish I felt more comfortable. I wish I was less scared. Like there's so many other elements of outdoor climbing that have nothing to do with my fitness necessarily or my finger strength. And I just kind of want to like be a better climber. And I want to feel more comfortable on the rocks, like that we all know. And I think in addition to that, there's like just to have that confidence when we climb demands like a lot of mental stability in ourselves.
Mhm.
And I know like on days where I'm like feeling like my mental health is not 100%, it's going to be hard for me to pull on. It's going to be hard for me to commit. It's going to be hard for me to top out. It's going to be hard for me to feel safe. And so kind of being honest with myself when I'm at the rocks and being like, well, how am I feeling today? Like to check in with myself and kind of see where's my mental game today. That's been a great lesson at here in Bishop, especially at the buttermilks, that I've been like paying more attention
Yeah.
to. Like there are days where I know I need to stay low, or days where I'm just going to try moves, but I'm not going to send, and that's okay too. And to notice when I have a day where I'm feeling confident and I'm feeling stable and I'm feeling present, and then just kind of leaning into that and sending, that's really special. So yeah, I went to Jedi Mind Tricks. I tried it. It was the most scary thing in the world. I bailed off of the top multiple times. And then there's just a moment where I was like, I want to try this. And I remember I was sitting with a good friend, and I asked her if she was going to do it again. And she said to me, like, I don't know if I'm ready to be in that space today. And I was like, you know what? But maybe I am. So I just like put my shoes on, did one more go, and like really just kind of committed to it. So that's, for me, that was like a really exciting send. I
That's
feel like
amazing.
I did something there. So I'm stoked on that. Um, there have been some other like really epic climbs that I've got to do. There's always a special experience when you flash a boulder, I feel like. Uh, for me, like no matter the grade, like when you go to a boulder and you can just climb it really efficiently, on site or whatever, that's for me always a special moment.
Yeah.
And a lot of the buttermilks climbing, I find it like pretty intuitive. unlike Fontainebleau, by the way, if we're if we're comparing
Yeah.
climbing destinations, and because to me it feels intuitive, like sometimes like it feels like I can flash certain things
Mhm.
um, easier than maybe I would in other places. It's not as cryptic, and to be able to do that, I think is always like really really exciting, and to me is like a boost of confidence of myself as a climber and my ability to read a route or to feel comfortable with the climb or to feel one with the rock or all those kind of ideas. So that's great. Um, and just this week, I finally did Flyboy Sit, which for me is like just my perfect style. Like as soon as I overhanging, crimpy, big dino to the lip at the end, like feet
Amazing.
cut loose. So that's also really exciting, and I'm really happy about that send as well. That was a
Amazing.
lot of fun to work on and really exciting to send.
I think I've seen that on your Instagram, your
Yeah,
van life Instagram. Yeah, it looks like such a good climb.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's really great, really fingery. So definitely like a tester for crimps and just power. A lot of power on that climb. And for me, obviously, like one of the hardest parts was just like committing to the top out,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and feeling like really shitty on the mantle.
Yeah. I think if we go back to before when you asked me like what's the thing about bouldering now, yeah, the last for me. So I did this climb in Albarracín. It's called something Pace of Bicicleta, I think, and it's quite easy until like it's a high ball. It's not very high, but it's quite I don't know. And but the crux is basically the end, like just before the top out.
Yeah,
And to do that and to stick that move was really amazing feeling. Like
yeah.
I don't get that often, so I think that's something that does that about.
Yeah, it's pretty common in bouldering that the last move is oftentimes the hardest, and certainly when you consider like top outs
Okay.
as part of a climb as well, like often in bouldering that is the hardest section of the
Mhm.
climb, like just getting on top of the boulder, which is also funny when you compare it to route setting, because like one of our
Yeah,
rules in route setting boulders was we never make the last move the hardest because we don't want injuries in the gym
yeah.
and things like that. Like we want generally like a stable, safe ending to climbs.
You should
So that's interesting.
you should come
Yeah, the tops and boulders are.
to the well, I don't know. Yeah, it's okay. Maybe many people will hear it, maybe not, but you should come to the bouldering gym here in Barcelona. One of them is the
Is it Sharma's gym?
yeah. The last
Is it terrifying?
the last moves is like it's quite tall anyway, and the last moves are like almost always the hardest. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
I'm
boy.
yeah
I mean, yeah, mimicking the outdoors a little bit,
yeah
I guess.
yeah yeah
It's just another element of the mental game that is interesting about climbing.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
Nice.
scary.
Yeah. Cool. So that's been really cool about the climbing specific. Let's go a bit like if I go solo to Bishop, is it easy to find people to climb with?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I don't know anything about the rope climbing scene. I'm sure there's like a whole scene about that, about how people find belay partners and stuff. But we've met so many people bouldering, really good people from all over. And our crew's changing because, that's just the nature of things. People come and go. And whether they're full time on the road or just coming in for the weekend, a lot of these things are very, temporary. But we're constantly meeting awesome people and great climbers, and we always have like a crew with us. There have been days also where I've headed to a boulder alone, and sometimes meet up with people, and sometimes not. But like you're in a pretty popular area, so there's like a lot of people around. And I think if you're looking for a social scene or more pads or a crew to join, I think you'll find it.
It's a good place. Nice. And
Yeah.
the climbers hangout, is there like a specific place to go to?
Yeah, so there's like if you're camping, like I said, the pit has more of like a climbers scene. Uh just like for instance, there are climbing rangers here which are great. Like the Bishop climbing rangers are awesome. I don't know if you're familiar with that, like in Europe, like
Mm.
that there's even this job called a climbing
No,
ranger, but
it
it's just
sounds
like these
amazing.
people. Yeah, you should do it. Just they walk around the boulders, I guess they're doing a lot of trail work, sometimes cleaning up people's poop and trash and stuff, but they're also just making sure that people know about the area, people know the climbing etiquette, people
Wow.
know to, not crush the brush and stay on trails, and I guess there's an element of them making sure that people are safe as well. Um, and following the rules of the space here, and being good stewards of the land and the boulders, because we're all guests here. So they're it's a full-time job, these
Yeah.
climbing rangers, and they do this thing at the pit campground every Sunday. They bring coffee from town, and they're just kind of there to talk to climbers and answer questions and just kind of
Nice.
spread the word on how to be. And so that happens every Sunday morning at the pit, and it's oftentimes a good scene. Last week we played hacky sack together for a while and just all kind of drank coffee and talked about rocks. That's at the camping. In town, the like I said, the Mountain Rambler Brewery is a good hang. A lot of different beers. I don't drink, but
Mm-hmm.
it seems like they have a lot of things on tap, and the food's all right. The fries are really good. So that's a cool place. And the coffee shop, the Black Sheep, is a climber's coffee shop, and it's often pretty crowded in the mornings, especially on days that are maybe a little too cold or windy for people to get out early. Um, and there's that small climbing gym, Stage to Summit, like I said, and there's quite a scene there. I mean, people are climbing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the locals, people who live here, maybe are working during the day and aren't going out to the boulders at night. You see people climbing in this tiny little gym, which is cool. So there's definitely a scene there. And in addition to all that stuff, there's a great gear exchange for secondhand outdoor gear and apparel of all types: climbing, skiing, camping, whatever. And they also offer like a lot of yoga and wellness and massage therapy and all these things. So there's quite a bit to do in town
Mm-hmm.
for a climber on rest days, and it's pretty awesome.
Nice. Yes. So rest days, really, that was my next question. So it's you
Yeah.
mentioned the hot springs.
Oh my God. Yes. There's amazing hot springs all around Bishop.
Wow.
Um, and like I find being in the hot springs just to be incredible recovery for my body and my
Yeah.
skin, and like I absolutely love it. Just south of town, pretty close, is a place called Keel Hot Springs. There's outdoor ones just on the side of the road.
Wow.
You'll find like a lot of old naked hippies
Yeah.
getting in there with you, so that's kind of cool. There's also paid hot springs there. I think it's like $14 for an entrance. There's like a cold pool and like a hot spring and showers. And then if you head towards Mammoth, there's like all these outdoor hot springs just north of the volcanic tablelands. And those are all free and pretty awesome. Some of them probably a good idea to have 4x4
Okay.
to
Mm-hmm.
access, but some of them are accessible in any kind of vehicle. Um, and I'm not going to say our favorite one because I don't
No.
want to give it
No.
away,
No.
but
No. Don't.
there's a lot of options over there, and just like kind of like spending the day in the hot springs is awesome.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. We're before a little bit before finishing. There is
Yeah.
a like a trend these days. It's called digital nomads. So
Yeah.
how is Bishop for that, as far as you know?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm probably not the best person to answer that because I don't work. So it's hard to, but basically what Mikey and I have been doing here in Bishop is we've been going a lot to the library. I think it's a small, really cute library. The Wi-Fi situation there is not incredible. You have to like get a code for 2 hours, and then if you want to keep working, you have to get another code,
Hmm.
and so like that can sometimes be a little bit annoying. But it's nice and quiet, and they have computers there, and you can also bring your own computer. And there are some coffee shops in town. They close pretty early, so if you're trying to get a full day of work in, sometimes is a challenge, and sometimes you have to go from coffee shop to coffee shop, unless you want to go to Starbucks. There's a Starbucks here that's open.
There's a Starbucks in Bishop.
Um,
I can't believe.
yeah, there's a Starbucks in Bishop. Um, There's actually a lot of pretty good food places. There's like a lot of
Yeah.
really good Mexican restaurants here. An okay Chinese restaurant. There's a Japanese restaurant here called Yamatani, I think it's called. I haven't gone yet, but it looks great from the outside. Um, so there's quite a bunch of food options. But in terms of working, like I think like there is room in Bishop to start like more of a hub,
Mm-hmm.
like someone could create a workspace, and I think like that would be awesome. Until that
Yeah.
happens, you kind of have to make do with the cafes
Uh-huh.
and the library and your own hotspots.
Yeah. There you go. So someone needs to go for that. Co-work in Bishop.
Listen, I think it should be you because I don't want to start a business and you're interested in, stewarding the climbing community. So
Yeah.
maybe you should get on that,
Maybe,
man.
maybe. There's plenty of the
I will also just say
pro.
one thing that's super cool about Bishop is just its proximity to Mammoth. There is a tremendous amount of overlap between the ski season and
Mm,
the climbing
yeah.
season. And people who do both, I think, would love being in this area because, you could climb on the weekends and go snowboarding or skiing in Mammoth just,
That's
less than an hour away.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good
Yeah.
point. Um,
Yeah.
Amazing. And last thing we didn't touch, like
Yeah.
supermarkets, restaurants, stuff like this. There is
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, we mainly shop at a place called Vaughn's in town. There's also a grocery outlet, which is good to find cheap prices, mainly on like packaged goods or canned goods. Um, that's basically been our shopping situation. Oh, what I didn't say is there's a fantastic dump station in town. So anyone coming and doing the van life and looking for a place to dump gray or black water
Mm,
or fill up, there's potable water or potable water and a dump station at the Speedway, the south end of town. It's free, and I think they just request like a donation to some charity. So that's been a great facility for us to use as well, and worth knowing about.
nice. That's a good one. Cool. But basically, once you arrive to Bishop, you're good. Like you don't need to go to Mammoth or to,
Never have to
yeah.
leave.
Nice.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, you'll be driving a lot on pretty bumpy, like washboard roads to get to the boulders. That's probably an important thing to know. The drive to the Buttermilks is a pretty gnarly road.
how
It
long?
changes every day, also, depending on the weather. It could be about 20 minutes just on that road, just to go a couple of miles. Very bumpy, very, very washboardy. And same with the drive to the Happies and the Sads. That's like one of the things that a lot of people find annoying about Bishop. But I think it's part of what it means to be here, and it helps kind of keep the boulders a little more isolated
Mhm.
and less busy. So I'm not for like paving those roads
Yeah.
necessarily, but it is worth knowing that for some people it
Yeah.
prohibits access and can be challenging. So that's something just to know about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. But you do it with the van, like easily, just careful.
I wouldn't say easily, like every time we go over those roads, it's like
Yeah.
your house is like freaking falling apart,
Yeah.
behind you, and it's kind of terrifying and like gives you a migraine a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do it a lot. Yeah,
Hmm.
we have to drive into town quite a bit for work and meetings and stuff. So we find ourselves doing those drives quite a bit.
Okay. Yeah.
You manage. Yeah.
Nice. Cool, man. Well, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'm super excited that you're doing this podcast, and I
Thank
feel
you.
really lucky and grateful to be a part of it in some small way. But really, it's just kind of great to see you and talk to you about climbing, and just reminds me how much I love you, and I'm super stoked that we're staying in touch, and I hope that we get to climb together soon.
Thanks, man. That's really kind words. I love you too, man. But I wanted to say that I remember when I left, and you were a bit burnt out by climbing, and
Yeah.
it's really nice to see you like your eyes shining when you talk about a specific boulder. So that's awesome. So I'm really happy to see
Wow,
that.
that's really great to hear.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
This
really fun.
this time
Uh,
in the States has like really been reminding myself why I love climbing and falling in love with the sport again, and kind of approaching it from a new perspective, certainly different than a professional perspective, much more of a passion at this point. And yeah, I feel really, really lucky, and
yeah.
it's a great thing to feel. So
So
that's
yeah,
great.
So
Thank you.
that's really nice, yeah, to see on a personal note, man. And
Yeah.
regardless, yeah, I told you like I never climbed there, and I feel like now I know, like now I want to go. I wanted before also, but I feel like we did a good job. Like you did a good job because I know what to expect, and
Okay,
it's
good.
awesome. I always feel like you
Will you
can
come
do.
this season?
No way, no.
No.
No, no, there's
Hmm.
so much going on. But we have a US trip, like not planned, but wanted. So
When?
uh,
Any ideas to when?
I don't know.
Okay, let's be in touch
We will
because
see.
it would really, really be great to do a trip together and have
Yeah,
you guys join us somewhere or plan to go somewhere together. That would be really awesome.
that will be. Yeah, yeah, man. So thank you so much, and
Of course.
keep climbing hard. We'll be in touch.
All right, man. Talk to you soon. Have a good one.
You too. Bye bye. Hey again. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Ezra and that it gave you a taste and appetite to visit this amazing area. For me, imagining bouldering one day, next day snowboarding, and in between relaxing in natural hot springs sounds pretty good. So I'm definitely planning my trip. You can see in the show notes here more detailed and in the website, climbingdestinationwebsite.com. Ezra, general recommendation, and his best boulders for every grade. You can also follow Ezra and Mikey Van Life on Instagram. That would be really nice. They upload really cool content. And on a different note, it seems like the crux or the hardest part, yeah, for those who doesn't know yet the term crux, of the podcast is actually finding people to be guests and talk about climbing areas. So if you're someone that want to be a guest and want to talk about their climbing area or somewhere they visit and know a lot about, or you know someone that would like to be a guest, please feel free to contact me on the Climbing Destinations podcast on Instagram. And also, please share the podcast regardless with your friends. That would be really awesome. I would love to see it grow. And the feedbacks are really good. So for now, episodes will be out every other Monday, so every 2 weeks. And the next one I will just say is about one of the most beautiful sport climbing areas, definitely in the world. Thanks so much again. Have a great and happy new year, and I'll see you on the next episode. Ciao, ciao.